This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So in the previous session, we made some introduction to the billing module in ISU. So primarily, ISU billing is the proprietary component, the most important component, because through the billing execution, we prepare the billing document based on which we'll prepare the invoice ultimately. And invoice is what we send it to consumer for collecting the payment. And invoice is also posted to FICA, the contract accounting. So billing document becomes the reference document based on which you prepare the invoice, which is called print document. Now, there are also some processes where we don't have to create the billing document. Directly, you can prepare the invoice. That will happen in the case of budget billing. In case of budget billing, there is no billing execution. Directly, you're preparing the invoice every month on a fixed day for a fixed amount, and then based on that, the invoice will be posted to FICA. So basically, as you know, in case of ISU, we perform the core business process, which is called the customer to pay cycle, or it is called meter reading to cash cycle. This is a day-to-day business process, what happens in ISU, meter reading to cash. That means the process will start with creating meter reading order based on which meter reading will happen, and then we collect the actual meter reading from the meter. Then we will enter results in the system, and then it will do validation of the results, and then validated data will be sent to billing execution. So billing execution will prepare a billing document. The primary agenda or the purpose of creating billing document is through the billing document we will determine one or many charge items. That means each charge item will contain a value what consumer has to pay. So there can be several line items, charge items, which are calculated. So when you add it together, we get the net value. So tax is not calculated in the billing document. Then based on the billing document, we'll prepare the invoice. And in the invoice, the system will also calculate the tax. And then based on that, a FICA document is posted. Then later on, we'll see how to process further the FICA document. Now, the specific feature about the billing is it is primarily division specific, and it is also specific to contract. That's the reason we call it as contract billing. So the prerequisite for billing is we must have a contract, which is again division specific. So when you execute a billing document, it is for a particular contract. Now, if the contract account is having more than one contract, we have to do the billing separately. Each contract we have to bill separately. But when you prepare the invoice, it is possible to make a joint invoicing. That means for one contract account, there can be more than one billing document. We can put them together in one single invoice, which will become a joint invoicing. So that's the reason the billing is specific to division, contract specific. Now, in order to prepare the billing document, we need certain master data. So the ISU billing module is divided into two main applications. One is called basically the billing master data, and another is called billing execution. Now, in general SAP, we have logistic modules, sales and distribution, and vendor management or purchasing. In sales and distribution, we process the sales order. Based on sales order, we prepare the delivery and the billing. And then when you prepare the invoice in SD, it is directly posted into financial accounting. So that billing is different. That is the SD billing. But in ISU, we prepare utility billing document. And then the main difference between these two, when you compare, after the billing is done, basically billing is a process in SD where you prepare different types of billing documents like invoice against delivery, invoice against order, credit memo, debit memo, cancellation of invoice. return sales memo. So you prepare actually different types of billing documents in SD, and when you save it, directly it is posting into financial accounting. So while execute the billing document, there is a sales and distribution and financial accounting integration will happen. Okay. So basically we set up what is called account determination, which is basically revenue account determination. Based on this, when you prepare the billing document in sales and distribution, in the billing document there will be one or many conditions: price, discount, tax, freight. All these conditions will maintain the GL account determination. And then reconciliation account is fixed in SD. When you create a customer master record, the customer number itself will act as an account, and you maintain for the customer company code data. And in the company code data, we will maintain the reconciliation account. So reconciliation account is not a variable, it is fixed. Now, when you post the invoice, the system will debit the amount to customer account and then reconciliation account and various revenue accounts based on the SDFI integration. Similarly, when you prepare ISU billing document, there will be integration between SAP ISU and FICA and there will be account determination maintained in the system. And this account determination is reflected based on the integration what you have done between ISU and FICA. So when you create the billing document in ISU also, there is a revenue account determination, but also there is a reconciliation account determination. Because in ISU, the reconciliation account itself is not fixed, it's a variable. Depending on the kind of billing or invoicing document what you are preparing, the system will determine the particular revenue accounts and also reconciliation account. But unlike in the case of SD, when you prepare the billing document, nothing is posted into financial accounting. It will actually determine all the GL accounts. If all the accounts are determined correctly, then only you can save the billing document. We cannot save the billing document if there is any error in account determination. Okay. So at some stage when you're defining the billing master data, we will see how this integration will happen between ISU and FICA. But when you prepare the billing document, nothing is posted into financial accounting. Only when you prepare the invoice and you save it, the FICA document is posted. Again, when you post the SD invoice, when you post the ISU invoice, there is no direct posting into financial accounting. It will always post to FICA, and from FICA, we will post to financial accounting manually. Okay. So these are the broad differences between SD billing and ISU billing. Okay. So that will reflect in the billing execution. But in order to do the billing execution, we must have maintained appropriate billing master data. So first we have to maintain the billing master data in the system. It is division specific. So in our case, we have got electricity. So we have to set up the master data for electricity division. Again, there can be more than one set of master data in electricity, depending on the scenario. Suppose you are doing the billing for a contract account holder, which is a household residential consumer electricity, and using a single rate meter, there is one set of master data. But suppose you are having a two rate meter in electricity for residential consumer, there will be one more set of master data. Or if you are billing for a meter, which is a smart meter, then you have a separate master data for that. Or if you're billing, let us say, street lighting, there is a separate master data. Or if you're billing, let's assume, a commercial consumer or industrial consumer, accordingly, you can maintain the billing master data. That means under one division, we have to set up more than one set of master data. And according to the master data, there will be link happening between the billing master data and the technical installation, what is called utility installation. In the installation, when you maintain for premise, we will make integration with the billing master data. And also, billing master data will integrate with the device management. When you do device installation, full installation, we will also integrate with the billing master data. So based on this integration, certain parameters are determined in the installation and they will be used during the billing execution. Now, billing master data, what we define in ISU is called as rate structure. It is called as rate structure. Using the rate structure, we can map what are the billing rules of the company, how the billing should happen, the procedure, the methodology has to be mapped into SAP. For that, we actually define the rate structure in the system. In the particular rate structure, what we define in the ISU billing master data has various parameters, like we have to define a billing class, rate type, and then we have to define operands. But these operands should define based on the variant program, what you're going to use in the system. Variant programs are provided by the system. They are one kind of module programs. They are predefined in the system. But for each of the variant program what you use, certain operands have to be defined. These operands we are going to define for the division and for a particular operand category. So operands you have to define. Then we have to define a rate, one or many rates. And once the rates are defined, we prepare something called schema. And after schema is created, we prepare something called a rate category. And then we define a rate type. Based on the rate category and the rate type, the ultimate rate will be determined. Rate is the most important component in the ISU billing master data. Rate is the one which will actually control what calculations should happen when the billing document is processed. So it is a calculation unit. It is something similar to our pricing procedure, what we use in sales and distribution. The rate will calculate one or many line items. Sometimes it is not possible to calculate all the line items using one rate. So we may have to customize more than one rate. And all these rates, whether it is one or many, will go and sit in a schema. Okay. And the schema will be put into rate category. And based on the rate category and the rate type, the rate will be determined. So that we will see how it will happen. Also, we have to define price keys. What are the prices applicable for the billing calculation? They will be defined through the price keys. The price keys are containing the customization data and also application data. So based on the price key, we know what are the prices we are going to use in the calculation. And the values of the price keys will be stored in something called the facts. Okay. So there are more than one unit where the facts can be stored. The operand values can be stored in the facts. And based on that, the billing calculation will happen. Okay. So this is the overall understanding about the billing master data, where we are now going to define all these parameters one by one. And once they are ready, we put them together in a rate structure, and the rate structure will be used in the billing execution. So first, let us define the required parameters one by one. So we will go to IMG. SAP utilities, and then contract billing. In contract billing, we will select the billing master data, define billing class, and then rate structure. So this is our entire scope of definition. So first we will select the billing classes. Now, what is billing class? Let me explain. Billing class will basically classify the installations. Will classify the installations. So n number of installations are assigned to one billing class. And according to billing class, the rate category will be defined. The rate category is the highest definition in ISU billing master data. The rate category is actually like a tariff structure. Okay, tariff structure in the sense its rate category contains all the logic that is required for billing calculation. Okay, so depending on the billing class, we fix the rate category in the installation, And the rate category contains all the parameters which are connected to each other. So basically, rate category contains what we call the schema. There will be one schema. Under schema, you will have one or more rates, and each rate will contain one or many line items calculation, and each calculation is performed using a variant program, and associated operands. So ultimately, first you have to, when you start creating, first you have to create the rates, one or many rate, and in the rate we maintain all the required line item calculation using the variant program and associated operands. Once the rates are ready, we put them into schema, and the schema is put into rate category, and this rate category will go and sit in the installation data. So if you see any installation, what we have defined so far for other divisions, if you go to ES31 installation data change, you can find out any installation defined for some of our divisions what we have worked earlier. Let's say 30 is the division. We have got so many installations. If you select one of the installation, in the installation you will find two very important parameters of the billing master data. One is called billing class and another is called rate category. Now this billing class and rate category are actually coming from the billing master data. So there is an integration between the billing master data and the technical installation. Also, if you go to devices, we have maintained device installation data, full installation, where you have got a rate type. This rate type is also coming from the billing master data. And based on the rate type here and the rate category in the installation, the rates are determined and they are stored in the installation data. So if you go to the rates, there is one rate which is stored in the installation. There can be one or many rates, and the rate is the one which is going to do the billing calculation. So the technical master data installation contains all the relevant information about the billing master data. So first we will understand what is billing class. Billing class groups together n number of installations which will follow the same logic for the billing calculation. Let us assume I am a residential consumer and I am consuming electricity. So I am staying in a particular apartment or a house for which there is a premise and installation data. In the installation, a billing class has been maintained. Now, based on this, a rate category has been maintained, and it is the one which is going to perform the billing calculation. Now, I am a residential consumer having a single rate meter and consuming electricity. Now, whatever logic is used for billing calculation for me will be similar to the person next building, next apartment, because that is also a residential consumer consuming electricity, single rate meter. That means in the entire building, there are 20 apartments. All the individual owners billing will happen, or the tenants billing will happen. But the logic used is same, because if all of us are basically residential consumers using the single rate meter. Similarly, there are n number of apartment buildings in the whole area and in the whole city. Okay. So for all the consumers who are basically using a single rate electricity meter, consuming electricity, there will be one billing class. Okay. So if you see Jet 300 is basically defined as a household residential consumer with single rate electricity meter. That means billing class is something what is spread over millions of technical master data installations. That means all these installations will have the same logic for billing depending on the billing class. So billing class itself is not having any control, but it is a very important parameter when you define here. Billing class will be used as one of the plausible parameter. Like we are going to define rate, schema, rate category. All these definitions will happen based on a billing class. Only when you define them for a particular billing class, they can be put together. That means if I create a rate for one particular billing class, it has to be put in schema of the same billing class. Then only they can join together. Similarly, schema prepared for the building class has to be put in a rate category which is having the same building class. So it will ensure we can connect all these parameters which are defined for a building class. A schema defined for one building class cannot be put into rate category defined for the another building class. System will reject it. Okay. So that way, the building class will ensure we connect all the parameters properly without any error happening. Okay. So that is the purpose of the building class. So first we will define one building class. Select the new entry. So ours is starting with 6. So we will define it as Z600 household consumers with single rate electricity meter. Naturally, there will be thousands of millions of installations which are of this type. In all those technical installations, we will maintain this particular building class. As you can see, it doesn't have any control data. It doesn't have any configuration data, but it is just a definition with a 4 key identification letter, identification number, and a proper description. Okay, but this is the most important definition. So we have defined first the building class. Now we will go to the rate structure. Okay. In the rate structure, analyze variant program and define rate type. Okay. What is variant program? I'm going to explain shortly. But actually, definition of rate type will keep it pending. We'll define it in the later stage. That means when you define all the parameters, we will define the rate type. Because when you are learning billing as a new topic, it is a bit difficult to understand the concept of rate type straight away. Okay. But after having defined all the parameters, when you define the rate type, by that time we would have understood some logic about the billing calculation. So we will keep the definition of the rate type towards the end. When we define the rate category, we will define the rate type. Then we will use them for the rate determination. Okay. So we are not defining the rate type at the moment, but now we need to know three important things. One is the variant program, operands, and the rate. So you can see here variant program, operands, and the rate. These have got direct connection between them. Okay. So in order to define the rate, we must be ready with the variant program. And for the particular variant program, we have to have the corresponding operand. So first of all, let us understand what is rate. Okay. Rate is the smallest block of calculation. It's the smallest block of calculation. When you do the billing, at least one rate should be available. Okay. Without rate, nothing can happen. No calculation can happen. So there has to be minimum one rate. But sometimes depending on the requirements, the technical parameters what to define in ISU billing, there can be more than one rates. Okay. One rate is anyway compulsory. But sometimes you cannot fit all the calculations into one single rate. Then you'll be defining more than one rate. So there can be one or many rates. But what is rate actually doing? Rate contains one or many steps of calculation. One or many steps of calculation. So basically billing line items are calculated using the what you call the rate. The rate contains one or many steps of calculation. Each step will calculate a billing line item value. Suppose you are billing a residential consumer which is having a single rate electricity meter. The first line item what you want to calculate is the energy amount. Okay. The energy amount is the consumption energy amount. Naturally, this amount is dependent on the meter reading result what we are doing. Every month we are periodically doing the meter reading. That is, what is the meter reading on that particular date? We collect it. We enter it in the system. And then it knows what is the previous month meter reading. And based on that, it will come to know what is the consumption quantity. The consumption quantity is in kilowatt hour. So energy amount is equal to the consumption energy in the quantity that is in kilowatt hour. So if you know what is the quantity in this month in kilowatt hour, then into price. The price is basically a quantity dependent price. We will say it is 12 rupees per kilowatt hour. It's a quantity dependent price. So if I know while doing the billing execution, when this rate is executed, in the rate in the first step of calculation, it is supposed to find out the energy amount. But in order to calculate the energy amount, it has to access the system to find out two important parameters. What is the particular quantity of consumption in this month for this installation, and what price should be applied. So once these values are known to the system, it will calculate the energy amount. But how will the system know? It has to use this particular logic. Okay, energy amount is equal to quantity into price. So this calculation is performed using a logic which is called variant program. Okay, so variant program is basically a kind of it's a functional module program. So SAP will provide all the standard module programs which are used worldwide. That means SAP ISU will provide inbuilt developed functional module programs as variant program. Each variant program can calculate one value. So several variant programs can be used in one rate. That means several steps of calculation will happen in the rate, and each rate will contain one variant program. But whenever you're using a variant program, you must know what operands are going to be used in the calculation. Now, in this particular case, energy amount is calculated using a variant program called Quanti01. Okay, it's a system-defined variant program. But whenever you're using Quanti01, there are two types of operands. We have one operand called quantity and one operand called price. That is quantity-based price. Okay, so these are called input operands. Operand is basically variable. Okay, that means for every contract, when you do the billing, these are the two variables. For that contract or the installation, what is the measurement quantity for the month? What is the price? Okay. Again, it will do the billing for the next contract. Again, for that contract, what is the quantity? What is the price? So based on these input variables, the amount is calculated. The amount is called output operand. It's called as output operand. That means if you can fix the value for the input operands, if you use this particular module program, if you know the values of the input operands, it can find out the operand value for the output amount that will be passed on to billing execution. That means in the billing line items, when the calculation happen, you will see the amount is equal to so and so. Okay. So that means it is a variant program which is controlling the calculation which is supposed to happen. But apart from the standard energy amount what you are calculating, we also require sometimes in certain companies to calculate the standing energy. Okay, the standing energy is nothing but the lump sum energy amount. Lump sum energy amount. Every month when you do the billing, we are billing for the actual consumption quantity, which is variable, but we are also charging the consumer every month certain fixed energy charge. The energy charges are fixed annually. This is something like minimum service amount what they have to pay for the service operations. That means for all the residential consumers, we say every year they have to pay 6,000 rupees per year, irrespective of what is the consumption quantity. Okay, it is a fixed energy price, but we are maintaining it on the basis of number of days. It is for month or per day or for a year. So 6,000 rupees for a year. When I am doing the billing in this month, the billing number of days is 30 days. So for 30 days, what is the amount? 30 by 365 into 6,000. That is the standing energy. But how will the system know it has to calculate the standing energy? Then we use one variant program, lump sum 01. Okay. Lump sum 01 is a system defined variant program. In order to calculate the lump sum energy prices, we need again two input operands. One is called L price. What is the lump sum price? Into a factor. Lump sum energy price is, let us say, 6,000 rupees per year, 365 days. Factor is just a numerical value. Let's say for all residential consumers, factor is 1.25. For commercial, it is 1.5. And for industrial, it is 1.7. Okay. So if you know what is the value of L price and the factor, then the amount is calculated. And amount is itself is the output what you are getting. So if you use lump sum 01 as the variant program, we have to define two input operands. One is the L price, one is the factor, and another is the amount. So the operands are actually variables, and how many operands are required, it depends on the variant program what we are going to use. Okay, and in order to use that particular variant program, we have to define the operands. SAP will not give the operands because operands are division specific. Since we are going to define the divisions in the enterprise structure, for that division we have to define the required operands. So depending on the variant program what you have to use, first you must keep ready all the operands defined, and once the operands are ready, you should be in a position to create a rate, because in the rate you're going to put the variant program. The moment you put the variant program, it will ask for the operands what you defined. Then you can fill up the operands what you have defined. That means in order to go ahead with the rate definition, first and foremost is we have to define the operands itself. Okay. But whatever operand you define, how will the system know that operand will work like a quantity, or will work like a quantity based price, or will work like an amount? Okay. There has to be some understanding happening at the system level. Okay. That's the reason when you create a operand, we have to use operand category. Okay. Operand category. Operand category is the system classification for the operands. If you define a particular operand based on operand category, then the system will know what is the purpose of that operand. Suppose if I define X as the quantity, okay, Y is the price, Z is the amount. But how will the system know X is the quantity or Y is the price and Z is the amount? We are defining X, Y, Z based on the system defined operand category. If I define X using the operand category as quant, okay, then the system will know X is going to behave like a quantity. If I define Y as Q price, quantity based price, then the system will know that it is a quantity based price. And Z I'm going to define based on operand category amount. Then whatever value is calculated will be assigned to value Z, because it is having the operand category as the amount. So operand categories are already provided in the system. There are 20 operand categories which are available in the system. We cannot make any changes to those customization. In fact, in the customization, you don't see the customization of the operand category. Although there is a customization table, you cannot access it in the IMG. It is purposely not shown in the IMG because someone may try to change them. It is not supposed to be changed. But for understanding purpose of the operand category, it is available in separate table. Okay. So essentially, operand categories are already defined. Variant programs are already defined. But in order to use operand, in order to use a variant program, we have to first define the operand itself based on the operand category. Okay. So let us see. First, we'll try to create one rate for the consumption energy amount calculation, that is quantity 01. In order to use a quantity 01, we have to first define the operands. So go to operand and then select the define operands and then create the operands. The operand is identified by a number. It is not a number range object. You can freely enter the number depending on your requirement. And if it is not already defined, you can go ahead with that. Okay. Now let me define it as 60. I think as we defined. So 60-1. Okay. I'll define operand category. You can see here operand categories are 20, and in this various categories are available. Right now we require quant, general quantity consumption. Okay. Consumption in case of electricity means kWhr, kilowatt hour. Tomorrow, suppose you are going to calculate the demand value, that's the kW amount. Okay. Then the quantity will be the demand, the peak demand. So for that, you have a separate operand category demand. Okay. Demand is kW, whereas the energy, that is the quantity, is in kilowatt hour. Okay. So we will have to select the quant, and our division is 60. Okay. And then we have to select operand usage. Here you are going to select the register operand. Basically, what is operand usage? It is defining the access control. Okay. When the system is going to start doing the billing, the variable here is 60-1. But what is the value of it? It has to find out. Okay. Naturally, how does it find out? The value of 60-1 is actually quantity in kilowatt hour. But how we will come to know what is the consumption quantity? Based on the register, which is part of the meter. Every month when you do the meter reading, we are doing the reading of the particular register which is there in the meter. Okay. If it is a single rate meter, it will have only one register. So for that register output, we will define one operand. So 60-1, the value of this operand will come from the meter reading results what you entered in the system for that particular register. Suppose we have got meters with two rate meters. That means it has got two registers. One is recording on peak, one is recording off peak. Then we will have two operands, 60-1 on peak quantity, 60-2 off peak quantity. And both are register operand, so there will be two registers. So we have to define two register operands for the individual register, what is there in the meter. Okay. So register operand means it is something related to the register of the meter. Normal usage means for all the price variables, we use a normal usage. It means the value of the operand will come from the facts. Facts are the provisions available in ISU at three different places, like installation, rate category, and the rate. In all these places, we can store the facts value. Tomorrow, suppose if I define a variable with the normal usage, let us say price, we'll be defining a price key, and that value of the price key will be assigned in the facts, which are stored in the installation level or rate category level or the rate level. So that is how normal usage will come. RTP operand will come in the case of smart meter, where we are going to have the interval meter. An interval meter will keep recording the consumption in small intervals. But when you want to do the billing, you will have n number of values for every 15 minutes. So we cannot bill straight away. We have to have a RTP designed, which is called real-time pricing interface. So whenever you're going to use a variant program for calculating the energy amount of the register of a interval meter, we must define it as a RTP operand, because there the value of the operand will come from the RTP interface. So we will see in the future when you're working in the interval meter how to define the RTP operand. So normal usage, register operand, RTP operand. Complete history means the operand value will come from the historical value. Okay. So there are some calculations which will need some historical consumption quantity. In that case, all these values are updated in the installation fact and system will access it. Okay. So at the moment, what we require is register operand, selecting it, and then continue. 60-1 is operand, it's a register operand. We have defined it for the division 30, and text you can give it as energy quantity. Energy quantity. The unit of measurement is kilowatt hour. Okay, that is in kilowatt hour. Weighting key 01. Weighting key is not important here. You have to just maintain the value 01. It is something what can have some impact in the case of the gas billing. So we maintain linear weighting and then save it. So 60-1 is a variable which represents the quantity. And the value of 60-1 will come from the metering result what you entered for the meters register in the system. Now this is the quantity. Now we will define one more operand, 60-2. 60-2 is going to represent the price. But there are different types of prices. What you can define: quantity-based price, lump sum energy price, time-dependent price. But for the energy amount calculation, you require a quantity-based price. Quantity-based price means depending on the quantity, what is the price? That means 1 kilowatt hour, the price is 12 rupees. Tomorrow, suppose you are going to do demand billing for 1 kW or one what you call the kVH, what is the value? Okay. Or if it is like in the case of water, it is meter cube. For 1 meter cube, this is the price. In the gas, 1 meter cube gas is so much price. Okay. So it's a quantity. That means operand category is a Q price. But tomorrow, suppose if you're going to define L price, then the category is different. Time dependent price used in the demand billing is having a different control. So here at the moment you're using operand category as Q price. Q price means quantity based price. Then the division is 60, and here we have to maintain normal usage. Normal usage means when the billing execution will happen, system will check the facts, and from there it will get what is the value to be used for 60-2. We'll be defining a price key, and that price key information will be stored in the facts and assign the value to the operand 60-2. So whenever you're doing the billing, system can access the facts level information and assign the value for the 60-2. It's a normal usage. So now we will continue. Then we will say this is the energy price, and it is measured in kilowatt hour, per kilowatt hour. So, okay, kilowatt hour. That means 10 rupees per kilowatt hour. That's how we can understand, and then save it. So we have defined the quantity, we defined the operand. Now we will define 60-3. That is going to be representing the amount. So the operand category here we have to select as amount. That is amount. And then this is normal usage again. It is not something derived from the facts or derived from the register, but all the output values are always stored as a normal usage. Sometimes you can also update the amounts in the facts. That's why it is given as normal usage. So the particular operand category here is the amount. So now continue. We will say this is the energy amount. So one thing we would have seen, whenever we define the operands, we are defining them for the particular division. All the operands have been defined for the division 30, 60. Okay. After defining the operands, we are now ready to create a rate. Okay. Rate can contain one or many steps of calculation. Each step will use particular variant program. That means it is actually creating a billing line item, the charge amount. Okay. At the moment, we are calculating the energy amount. So we have defined the operands. So in our rate, we are going to use the variant program as quanti01. Now, we cannot define straight away rate unless we are integrating the C with the FICA. So what is the FICA integration we have to do? We will see. But where this integration is required, in what format it is required, so that we have to understand. So we'll try to create a rate and then we'll see where we get stuck. Go to define the rate and then create the rates. Let us call our rate as Jet 600. The purpose of this rate is to calculate the residential consumer single rate electricity meter. So this particular rate is going to calculate one or many line items for the consumers which are having single rate electricity meter, which means we'll do one register enabled calculation. All other calculations are independent of register. Okay. That means the rate should contain definitely one line item, which is basically having the value corresponding to quanti01. That means when you create the rate, we must put the variant program quanti01. Apart from quanti01, which is calculating the energy amount, you can also add some more variant programs like lump sum energy amount, discount, any other such calculations which are independent of the register. But there should be one variant program used in the rate, which is going to be containing quanti01. Now, when we define the rate, it is not a free definition. We have to define the division. We have to define the rate for a particular division, that is 60, and for a particular building class, that is 600. This is the header level data. That means the entire rate is identified for which division it is defined and for which building class. But then permissibility. That means this rate will work only for register permissibility. Okay. That means this rate is going to calculate the values for a particular register of a meter. Okay. Which means our rate is going to contain energy amount calculated based on the register output, that is a meter reading. Okay. That means tomorrow, suppose if the meter is having two, what you call the registers, one is on peak, one is off peak. We cannot calculate both in one rate because rate is specific to register. So if you've got two registers, then we must define Jet 600 as on peak register rate and Jet 601 as off peak rate register. That means there are two rates going to come. One rate for the energy amount for the, the on peak, one for the off peak. That means it is register dependent. It is only performing billing calculation for a particular register. It cannot contain the energy amount calculated for more than one register. That is a limiting factor. Okay. So when you create a rate, there are permissibility. Okay. Register permissible interval meter. Interval meter means when you define a rate, unless the meter is interval meter, we cannot use it. Okay. Device permissible. Device means, let's say we have got single rate meter, two rate meter. Again, it's a Siemens meter or Hertz meter. Whenever you want to calculate the device rental value, the rate should be permissible at the device permissibility. Facts permissible means the rate is working based on the facts information. The facts permissible rates are used when there is no device. For example, we are doing street light billing. When you're doing the street light billing, there will not be any meter reading, but we are using some other logic to calculate the energy amount. So in such case, all the information what you require for billing will be stored in the facts. That's why it's called facts billing. So it is facts permissible. W billing is basically waste billing. In SAP, we used to have one division called waste management. So if company is going to use waste management, then we can also define a particular rate which is permissible for the waste billing. And period end billing is a simulation program. So we will see what is period end billing towards the end. So we are going to define rates for all these scenario. Rate permissible, register level, interval meter, device permissible, facts permissible, and also period end billing. Now, since our rate is dependent on the register, we must enter register operand here. For this operand, this rate is going to work. So it is 60-1, and the validation class is 0001. This validation class is going to be defined in device management. It's a part of meter reading process control. Basically, when you're doing the billing, the meter reading results what are considered should have been, approved results based on the validation class. Validation class is actually controlling the validation of the meter reading results. Okay. When every month when you perform the meter reading, we enter the results in the system. But whatever results we are entering, whether it is acceptable or not, okay, some validation should happen. And if the validations are conclusive, then the results are okay to be used. Otherwise, it is blocked for billing. Then you have to correct the meter reading results, then only it can go for billing. That means when you're doing the billing, the meter reading quantity should have been approved through the validation class 0001. The minimum portion you can enter any value here because this is not a portion dependent, billing calculation. So you can enter 100%. So what is this minimum portion? I'll explain separately. Here the portion per se has got no contribution. So you can enter any value. So we'll just enter it as 100. Now we'll go to rate steps. Rate steps means each step is going to perform one calculation. In the rate, suppose if you have put 10 steps, that means 10 variant programs. Each step is going to perform one calculation. And in order to perform the calculation, we must have the variant program. If you are going 10 values to calculate it, that means 10 different values you are calculating. And each value is calculated using a variant program. And for each variant program, we are going to have the particular set of operands which are defined. Okay. At the moment, we are defining a rate, which is basically containing energy amount calculation. So for that, we're going to use quanti01. This is a variant program. Now, when the variant program quanti01 is used, we have to use what are the operands we need. Okay, we already defined the operands here. There is one input operand 60-1, that is the quantity, and we have defined one operand for the price, that is the quantity based price, and the corresponding amount 60-3. Okay, so that means whatever operands you have defined for the particular division, we are able to put here. Then you can also put here the info record. Info lines are written about the quantity. Info lines means basically whenever you use quanti01, actually there will be two line items when you do the billing. Okay, what are the two line items? First line item is the statistical information. It will simply say in this month the billing quantity is 600 kilowatt hour. Okay, that means for the quantity it will add one info line. For this month the billing is 600 kilowatt hour. Next month it may show this month billing quantity is 700 kilowatt hour. A statistical information. Then the amount will be calculated. 600 into 10, 6,000 rupees. So info lines can be written to the quantity, and that's why we are maintaining control as T. And then period control. For which period the billing is happening. So we are selecting here to the day. To the day means actual number of days. Suppose we have done the last month meter reading. We are in the month of December. Every month our meter reading is supposed to happen around the 26th. Okay. So last month, 26th November, we have done the meter reading. We got the result. And then consumption will start from 27th up to this month 26th. Okay. This month 26th. That means the consumption recorded on 26th is the last reading. So actual consumption will again start from 27th of the November till 26th of December. For these many days, actual number of days, we have done the meter reading. Okay, so that is called to the day. That means actual number of days. So here we are not, kind of a estimation for the number of days. Okay, so we are selecting here to the day and then continue. But whether our rate is conclusive, can I save it? So if you check the completion report consistency, it will say something is missing. Specify the sub transactions for variant program. So it says you are using a variant program Conti01. For this variant program, we need certain sub transactions. What are the sub transactions here? There are 4 columns here: DST, debit sub transaction, credit sub transaction, budget billing debit sub transaction, and budget billing credit sub transaction. But if you go and see the value, there will not be any value available here. Okay, that means unless these columns are filled with the value, we cannot create a rate. Okay, so you need to understand what is this sub transaction. Okay, the sub transactions definitions will happen in FICA. Okay, so in the FICA module, in the ISU FICA module, the FICA consultant will define the sub transactions and we integrate them here in our rate. Okay, so unless we have got the sub transactions available in the system, we cannot go ahead with the rate. Actually, sub transactions are available in the system, but they are not showing here because unless you assign them to our company code and division, we cannot actually use the calculation. Okay, so that means sub transactions we have to calculate. So where are these sub transactions? That means although I have got variant program operands, I cannot create a rate now because unless the integration is there with the FICA, I cannot complete this particular customization. So let us come out of it for time being. We cannot do much here at the moment. So now we will go to FICA, go to IMG, go to the financial accounting new, contract accounts receivable and payable, and then go to basic functions. In the actual project, we don't do this. It will be done by the FICA consultant. But here we have to define as a FICA consultant these parameters because unless they are available, we cannot go ahead with the rate. Now we go to contract accounts receivable and payable, basic function, and then postings and documents, and then go to document, and then go to maintain transactions, maintain document assignments. So here you can see main transaction and sub transaction. In the rate, what you're using is a sub transaction, but sub transactions are not defined directly. They are defined for certain main transaction. So you need to understand what is the main transaction and what is the sub transaction. Main transaction and sub transaction. These are purely FICA perspective, but we must have some idea about them clearly. And only when you know the concept of them, then we can define the rate. So let us try to understand from the FICA perspective, what is this main transaction and sub transaction. The main transaction defines the transaction for which a FICA document is going to be posted. Okay, that means when you post a FICA document, every FICA document what you post is identified by a main transaction. The purpose of main transaction is to fix the reconciliation account. So using the main transaction, we're going to set up the reconciliation account determination. Okay. Now, whenever a particular transaction is happening, which is a main transaction, in that there will be at least one sub transaction but there can be also more than one sub transaction. Okay, that means all these sub transactions will happen within the main transaction. Now, what is the main transaction from the real object perspective? Now we are creating a FICA document, but what is the origin of FICA document? Okay, how does FICA document happens here? Now here we are not creating any FICA document upfront. Okay, actually FICA document is created in the background when the invoice is posted. Okay, I prepare an invoice and then post the FICA document. Okay, that means FICA document I am not creating upfront. You can also post FICA document directly for certain transactions like security deposit, interest calculation, your installment plan, incoming payment. In all such cases, again FICA document is posted in the background. But you can also post yourself a FICA document for miscellaneous items or sundry items. Okay, but in the generic process like ISU, the origin of FICA document happens to be an invoice. But invoice is again a very generic term. Invoice can happen because of billing, okay, or invoice can happen because of budget billing invoice. Okay, so there are different types of invoices what to create. For example, every month you do periodic consumption billing, and once the billing document is done, we are preparing invoice. And for that invoice, when you save it, it is going to post the FICA document. Okay, and then you also do sometimes move out billing. Move out billing means the final billing. The business partners staying in a premise, they are going for a move out. They are going to vacate the premise. So we'll prepare a move out document and perform the final meter reading. At the time of move out, what is the consumption? And based on that, we do move out billing. And once the move out billing is done, again you are preparing invoice and then post to FICA. Sometimes you may do manual billing. Okay, you do manual billing. That means independent of meter reading. For making some credit memo, debit memo, we prepare the manual billing. Again, in this case, the invoice is prepared, and then based on that, we process the FICA. Now, in all these cases, it is something happening in the billing side first, okay? And based on that, we are preparing the invoice. Now, there are some processes where we don't have to create a billing document. We can directly prepare an invoice. For example, budget billing, okay? In budget billing, there's no meter reading, there's no billing. Every month you do budget billing invoice. Budget billing is a scenario used in certain countries like Northern America or many of the European countries. They adopt budget billing. The budget billing is a process where we don't do meter reading for certain months. Okay. Budget billing is starting from January, it goes up to November. In all these 11 months, we are not going to do meter reading. We make a budget billing plan which is having equal amounts. Every month consumer has to pay 7,000 rupees. So that amount is calculated and stored in the plan. So for the months starting from January to November, we don't do meter reading and then billing. Directly prepare an invoice. An invoice will have the amount coming from the budget billing plan. A fixed amount, let's say 7,000 rupees. We prepare the invoice for the budget billing invoice. And then again, when you save it, a invoice is posted. Okay. But we are having different types of budget billing. Sometimes we may do partial budget billing and then invoice. Okay. Or we may do statistical budget billing and then invoice. Okay. Or we might be doing what you call the payment plan as a budget billing procedure, and then for that again invoice. Okay, that means invoice is something what to prepare invoicing module, and for every invoice what to prepare a FICA document is posted. Okay, but or sometimes you may do collective billing. Okay, again collective bill is a kind of invoice what to prepare, and then you post actually invoice. Collective bill itself is invoice, and then you post it. The FICA document is posted. That means the FICA document is ultimately document posted in FICA, but it has different origins. Although they are all invoices, the invoice itself is defined proper based on a particular scenario of billing. Okay. So in order to differentiate the FICA document, we have a main transaction. Okay. So if you use main transaction 0100, that means we have done the consumption billing and then invoice, and then the FICA document is posted. If the main transaction is 0200, that means you have done the move out billing and invoice, and then FICA has been posted. Then 0300 is the main transaction for the manual back billing credit memo, and for this invoice is posted FICA document. Then 0051 is for partial budget billing, 0050 is for statistical budget billing, 0052 is for payment plan, and 0075 is for consumption billing, so the collective billing. So each FICA document is posted is identified with a particular main transaction. If you find a FICA document for the main transaction 0100, it means that FICA document was posted because of invoice, which is a consumption-based billing invoice. But if you find out a FICA document which has been posted for 0200, it means the origin is a mode billing and invoice, and then FICA has been posted. But then why you are having different main transaction here? Because for each main transaction, we can fix a reconciliation account. Okay. If consumption billing invoice you are posting, whenever debiting the contract account, parallel amount will be posted to a reconciliation account, which is defined for 0100. Electricity, consumption billing, if main transaction 0100, 1,45,20 is a reconciliation account. But if you are posting a manual billing in invoice, then the main transaction is 0200, 1,45,21 is a reconciliation account for manual billing, the move out billing. Likewise, 1,46,20 is for move out billing, the manual billing, and 1,48,100 is for partial budget billing. That means, depending on the main transaction, you can fix the reconciliation account. And whatever main transactions you see here, these are called external main transactions. Okay. For all the generic business process, SAP is already defined. We can use them. There's no need to define the main transaction. But even if you define, we have to assign it to a internal main transaction. So there are two types of transaction: external main transaction, internal main transaction, external sub transaction, internal sub transaction. Internal sub transactions, internal main transactions are used for the system purpose. We cannot define them. Okay. But there will be connection between the external main transaction and the internal main transaction. And this assignment is unique. You cannot assign more than one main transaction to same internal sub transaction. So that's the reason we don't have to define any main transaction. Even if you define new one, you have to replace the existing assignment. So it doesn't serve any purpose. So unless you're doing miscellaneous posting or SD2 FICA posting, you don't have to define the main transaction. SAP has already given. So let us see what are the main transactions available here. So if you go to maintain main transaction, here you can see two types of main transaction. One is for the generic business process coming from ISU. Okay. Like say, for example, consumption billing, periodic consumption billing, move out billing, end billing, budget billing. All these are happening in ISU first, and then FICA is posted. And there are some main transactions which are defined for the generic business process in FICA itself. Okay, I am posting a security deposit. I'm calculating interest on the open items. I'm calculating, let's say, installment plan. The process is happening directly in FICA. It's not coming from ISU. So for that, there are sets of, the FICA main transaction. So one set of main transactions for the generic business process originating from ISU. One set of, main transactions for the direct preparations of the posting document in FICA. And one could be like our own definitions where you don't have assignment to internal main transaction. So if you see here, there are some transactions like application area R. That means our FICA operations are for utility. R is for, utility. FICA itself is a, basically application area R means it is basically a application area R is for utility purpose. Okay. Tomorrow you will have telecom system, insurance system. For all of them, you will have the main transaction. So here the main transaction is 0100. Okay. Consumption billing. That means 0100 is the consumption billing. 200 is for the final billing. 300 is for the manual credit memo, back billing. Similarly, if you see application area R, 0050. This is for statistical budget billing. 51 is for partial bill. 52 is for payment plan. There is one more thing also if you want to use, it's called payment scheme, okay, 50. But these are all actually defining in a way the process what is happening first in ISU, and then because that invoice is prepared, and then a posting document will happen. So FICA document is identified by these main transaction, collective bill 0075, okay. But there are some main transactions here which are happening directly in FICA. For example, returns, okay. Customer gave a check, we entered incoming payment, and the check was returned, okay. So now you do the return process. So there the main transaction is your returns. Or we are calculating posting a security deposit request, then it is 20. Security deposit interest you are calculating, that is 25. That means these are all the main transactions for the posting which are directly happening in FICA. Okay. That means if you go to FICA, you can see various processes are happening. If you go to contract accounts receivable and payable, if you go to the account, you are preparing interest calculation, installment plan, security deposit. These are the generic business process what is happening in FICA. And whenever you prepare them and post, a particular main transaction will come. Okay. So these are coming under the FICA. But invoice preparation is happening in ISU. We are responsible. Okay. So for that, there are certain main transactions. Now, under the main transaction, you will have many sub transactions. So we will go to maintain sub transaction. What is sub transaction? From the ISU invoice perspective, each sub transaction is describing one line item. Okay. For example, let us say I am preparing a invoice which is called consumption based invoice, consumption based billing, and then invoice. Now, how this billing is happening? Because of rate calculation. Okay. In the rate, I'm putting one or many steps of calculation. Okay. Each step is having a variant program. Okay. Each variant program is calculating line item. That means 0100 is the consumption billing. But in the main transaction, what are the sub transaction? Okay. Against each variant program, I'm going to assign a particular sub transaction. The sub transaction is happening within the consumption billing, that is 0100. So for 0100, I'll define one main transaction as 0021. This is the consumption energy amount. That means this line item is consumption energy amount. Similarly, 0100, I'm defining a lump sum energy amount calculation. That is 0010 or 20. Okay, this is the lump sum energy amount. So each sub transaction is a revenue item. Consumption energy is a revenue item. Lump sum energy is a revenue item. Or if you're collecting device rental, that's a P&L item. Basically, they are all revenue items. That means P&L, GL accounts will come into picture. Later on, when you actually prepare the invoice, the energy amount will be posted to one account. Lump sum energy amount is posted to one account. Similarly, device rental value is posted to one account, like that. Okay. So the main transaction is used for reconciliation account determination. Sub transactions are used for the revenue account determination. But actually, when you define a rate, we are calculating the sub transaction value. That means one or many steps of calculation, and each calculation is contributing as a sub transaction value. Okay. So basically, if you go to the sub transaction, you can define, you can see already there are some sub transactions. So here you can see application area R, 0100 is a main transaction. So 0001, 0002, 10, 11, 12, 13, 20. These are all SAP given, the sub transaction. But if you want, you can define your own sub transaction. Here you are free to define the sub transaction. So tomorrow I'll show you how to define your own sub transaction. But whatever sub transactions you define, they have to be consistent. Okay. That means tomorrow we might do billing for the consumption billing. We might use for, the manual billing or end billing. In all those scenarios, rate is going to same only. What will change? Main transaction will change. Sub transaction will not change because rate is fixed. Okay. So whatever sub transaction you define for 0100, you have to define for 0200, 0300, wherever that sub transaction is going to happen, because you're using the same rate, it will be consistent. Okay. So tomorrow we will see how to use existing sub transaction. But if you want to really understand how sub transaction will work, you can also define your own sub transaction. Actually, you don't define in project as a ISU consultant, FICA will define. But for our understanding purpose, we can define one sub-transaction to see what is the purpose, how it will work. Okay. So we have got some idea today. We will expand this understanding tomorrow. So after you define the sub-transaction here, we will assign them to company code and division. Then we are ready to continue with the rate. Okay. So tomorrow we'll define the rate. Once the rate is defined, then we can define the schema, rate category, all that will continue. Okay. So this is the most important integration what you're going to set up between the ISU and the FICA. Okay. So we will complete for today. Tomorrow we'll continue. Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir, and please go a little slow, sir. Actually, not an issue.
Yeah, sure. Now billing, it will happen that way only. Billing is a bit complicated area, so we'll go step by step. Initially, you may not get complete picture in billing, but once you define all the parameters, you will come to know. But the complete idea of billing only will happen when you do billing execution. Okay. So once you do the billing execution, you will understand how the parameters are working. Okay. So you have to go one step forward, again come back 2 steps backward. Like that, you have to understand billing. It is the bit of complicated area in the ISU, but we'll go slow. All the parameters you will understand in the due course of time. You'll understand.
Okay, sir. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right.